Before we dive into today's episode, I just want to remind you to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. It helps us grow, reach more amazing learners like you, and keep bringing you fresh and fun content every week. So don't forget, like, subscribe, and let's keep this journey going strong. Hello, wonderful idiom explorers, and a very warm welcome back to another exciting episode of Idiom Insights. I'm Emma, your enthusiastic guide, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you again, ready to delve into the fascinating nuances and captivating origins of some more common English phrases. It's always such a distinct pleasure to share this ongoing learning journey with all of you as we collectively navigate the incredibly colorful and often surprising world of English idioms.
And I'm Jack, your co-host and ever-curious word detective, always eager and here to help unravel the intricate meanings and perhaps share a chuckle or two as we explore the rich, expressive landscape of idiomatic English. It's truly wonderful to be back in the Idiom Insight studio, Emma, and a massive hello to all our fantastic listeners tuning in from every corner of the world. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us for another dose of idiom discovery and linguistic fun.
It's always a distinct joy, Jack, and I share your enthusiasm completely. Today, we've meticulously selected 4 incredibly useful and vividly expressive idioms that you'll undoubtedly encounter in everyday English conversations, in books, movies, and online. Understanding these particular phrases will not only significantly boost your comprehension skills, but also provide you with more natural, nuanced, and expressive ways to communicate your own thoughts, feelings, and observations. These chosen phrases are quite diverse, covering themes like secret happenings, periods of deceptive quiet, the process of gaining early experience, and even instances of failing spectacularly.
A truly excellent and wonderfully varied mix for today's session, Emma. These are precisely the kinds of idioms that really add character, depth, and a touch of sophistication to any conversation. They allow speakers to convey complex ideas with memorable imagery. So, without further ado, here are the 4 idioms we'll be thoroughly diving into in this episode of Idiom Insights. First up, we have an idiom for something that happens in private, often discreetly without any public knowledge or awareness, behind closed doors. Second, we'll explore a phrase describing a period of unusual quiet, tranquility, or peace that often precedes a time of significant trouble or intense activity, calm before the storm. Third on our list is an intriguing expression for gaining your initial foundational experience or skill in a particular area, job, or discipline. Cut your teeth on something. And finally, rounding off our selection, we have an idiom for failing in a very dramatic, often public, and utterly disastrous way. Go down in flames.
Those are all fantastic and very common idioms, Jack, each one wonderfully illustrative. Each phrase truly paints a very clear mental picture and is used with considerable frequency by native speakers, so understanding them deeply will be incredibly beneficial for our listeners as they engage in English conversations and encounter these expressions in various forms of media, from news reports to novels.
I couldn't agree more, Emma. They're all exceptionally practical and quite insightful, offering a glimpse into how language can be both functional and figurative. And before we delve into the intricate details and specific intricacies of our first idiom, we have a quick and sincere request from both of us here at the Idiom Insights team. If you're finding these episodes valuable for your ongoing English learning journey, and you genuinely enjoy our explorations into the world of idioms, please do take a brief moment to subscribe or follow our podcast on your preferred listening platform.
Yes, indeed. Subscribing is genuinely the best and most reliable way to ensure you don't miss any of our future idiom adventures and linguistic discoveries as we release them. And if you're feeling extra supportive and generous with your time, a simple like or a positive rating on your podcast platform truly helps other English learners around the globe discover Idiom Insights. We are so incredibly grateful for your engagement and continued support. It really fuels our passion for creating this content and sharing our love for the English language.
It genuinely makes a massive, tangible difference to us and helps the show grow. Thank you all for being such an integral part of our vibrant Idiom Insights community. Right then, Emma, are you ready and eager to tackle our first idiom? which I must say sounds very secretive and intriguing.
Let's certainly do it, Jack. Our first fascinating idiom for this episode of Idiom Insights is behind closed doors.
Behind closed doors. This phrase immediately makes me think of things happening in strict privacy, far away from the public view or any prying eyes. Is that the core, fundamental meaning, Emma?
That's exactly it, Jack. You've hit the nail on the head. When something happens behind closed doors, it signifies that it takes place in private, secretly, or without public knowledge, scrutiny, or participation. Important decisions are often made, sensitive discussions happen, or significant events unfold away from the eyes and ears of the general public, or indeed anyone not directly involved in the matter at hand.
So it strongly implies an element of secrecy and often a lack of transparency in the proceedings. For instance, if a government is in the process of making crucial decisions about a controversial new law, but all the discussions and debates are happening exclusively in private meetings with no media present and no minutes released, then those decisions are undeniably being made behind closed doors.
Precisely. That's a perfect illustration. Or to consider another common scenario, if a large corporation is negotiating a highly sensitive business deal, such as a merger or acquisition, the crucial talks between the CEOs and their legal teams would most likely happen behind closed doors. This is done to avoid any premature information leaking out that could negatively affect the stock market, disrupt the delicate negotiations themselves, or give competitors an undue advantage. It often suggests that the matters being discussed are confidential, strategically sensitive, or perhaps even potentially controversial if revealed too soon.
It can sometimes carry a slightly negative connotation, can it? It might suggest that things are being deliberately hidden from view, and perhaps, as a result, something untoward or not entirely above board is happening. But it's also important to note that it can be used quite neutrally, simply to mean in private, without any sinister implication.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The connotation can certainly vary depending on the context. Sometimes maintaining privacy is entirely necessary and appropriate for sensitive negotiations, for personal matters involving individuals, or for security reasons. Other times, however, if people feel that important decisions directly affecting their lives or livelihoods are being made behind closed doors without their consultation or input, it can understandably lead to feelings of suspicion, frustration, or general distrust towards those in power. The key element is always that lack of public access or visibility to the process.
So, to give another example, if a professional sports team is having an urgent private meeting to frankly discuss their recent string of poor performances with no coaches, management, or media personnel allowed in the room, that's a classic meeting happening behind closed doors. This allows players to speak more frankly and openly than they might otherwise.
Exactly. It's all about that specific private, unobserved setting where candid discussions can take place without external pressure or immediate public reaction.
Okay, that's very clear. So, when something happens behind closed doors, it essentially means it occurs in private, secretly, or without any public knowledge or oversight. Are you ready to hear Mia and Mark use this illustrative idiom in a typical conversation?
Let's definitely listen in. I'm quite curious to hear what private discussions or confidential decisions they might be talking about in their scenario.
Mark, have you heard any updates whatsoever on the proposed company restructure? There have been so many persistent rumors flying around the office for weeks now, but still no official announcements from management. It's making everyone more than a bit anxious and unsettled.
I know exactly what you mean, Mia. The distinct lack of clear, official information is definitely unsettling for everyone involved. I did happen to hear from Sarah in HR that the senior management team has been having a series of very long, intensive meetings all this week, apparently to finalize all the details of the plans.
Long, intensive meetings, eh? So essentially, all these crucial decisions about our jobs, our departments, and the overall future of the company are being made completely behind closed doors, with absolutely no input or consultation from the rest of the staff. That doesn't feel very transparent or fair, does it?
I agree it's certainly not ideal, and I understand your frustration. I'm sure they have their reasons for keeping it confidential at this particular stage, perhaps to avoid causing unnecessary panic, widespread speculation, or even the spread of misinformation. But it does make you wonder what exactly is being decided in those meetings behind closed doors, and how it will ultimately affect all of us when the news finally breaks.
Exactly my thoughts. I just sincerely hope that whatever they're deciding behind closed doors is both fair and well thought out, considering all the potential impacts. The waiting and not knowing the details is undeniably the hardest part of this whole situation.
That was a perfect and very relatable example. Mia and Mark discussed how important decisions about the company restructure were being made by senior management entirely behind closed doors. This effectively highlighted the inherent secrecy and the perceived lack of transparency that was, quite understandably, causing anxiety and unease among the employees.
Precisely, Jack. The idiom in their conversation very clearly conveyed the private nature of these crucial discussions and the significant fact that the wider staff were deliberately excluded from them, which naturally led to a climate of speculation and considerable unease throughout the company.
It's a very common and highly effective way to describe private, often sensitive proceedings or deliberations, isn't it?
It certainly is. So, next time you hear about important discussions or significant decisions happening secretly or in private, away from public scrutiny, remember the useful idiom, "It's happening behind closed doors."
And we'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you believe important decisions, especially those with wide-ranging impacts, should always be made openly and transparently? Or are there specific times when discussions behind closed doors are genuinely necessary or even beneficial? Share your valuable opinions in the comments section below this episode.
That's a great and thought-provoking question, Jack. Let's move on now to our second intriguing idiom in this episode of Idiom Insights. This one describes a particularly deceptive period of quiet that often carries an undercurrent of anticipation.
Our second idiom for today's exploration is calm before the storm.
Calm before the storm. This is such a wonderfully evocative and atmospheric phrase. It immediately makes me think of a profoundly still, almost unnaturally quiet moment just before a huge dramatic thunderstorm breaks with all its force. Is that the kind of situation it generally describes, Jack?
You've captured the image and the core meaning perfectly, Emma. The calm before the storm refers to a period of unusual quietness, apparent peace, or noticeable inactivity that occurs just before a time of great trouble, significant difficulty, impending chaos, or a burst of intense activity. It's a seemingly peaceful or tranquil interlude that often, almost ominously, foreshadows an impending period of turmoil, upheaval, or significant challenge.
So it's a deceptive kind of quietness, one that makes you instinctively suspect that something big, and probably quite difficult or demanding, is about to happen. For example, if a family is diligently preparing for many guests to arrive for a big holiday dinner celebration, the hour or so before everyone starts arriving, when the house is unusually quiet and everything is meticulously set and ready, might feel like the calm before the storm of ensuing noise, bustling activity, and ultimately, happy, festive chaos.
Precisely. That's a wonderful example. Or thinking about it in a business context. If a company knows it's on the verge of announcing some very bad financial news or initiating major layoffs, the days leading up to that official announcement, when everything on the surface seems relatively normal but there's a palpable underlying tension and unease in the air, could certainly be described as the calm before the storm. Everyone is likely bracing themselves for the impact of the bad news.
It often implies a strong sense of anticipation or even a slight foreboding, doesn't it? You might enjoy the quiet moment for what it is, but deep down, you know it's not going to last. It's as if the world, or at least your immediate environment, is collectively holding its breath before something significant and often challenging or disruptive occurs.
Yes, absolutely. It can be effectively used for both predictable storms, like the anticipated arrival of many guests, or the commencement of a very busy and demanding work period, and for more unpredictable or decidedly negative storms, such as an impending financial crisis, a brewing argument, or a difficult and unwelcome announcement. The common thread is that period of stillness beforehand.
So, to consider another scenario, if a teacher gives their students a few minutes of quiet free time, perhaps to review their notes one last time, immediately before starting a very difficult and lengthy exam, that quiet period of intense, last-minute preparation could certainly be seen as the calm before the storm of intense concentration, mental exertion, and inevitable stress.
Exactly. It represents a brief, sometimes welcome respite before the challenging period truly begins and demands full attention.
So, to summarize, The calm before the storm is a distinct period of unusual quiet or apparent peace that comes just before a time of significant trouble, difficulty, or intense, often chaotic activity. Are you ready to hear Mia and Mark use this atmospheric and highly descriptive idiom?
Let's definitely listen in. I'm quite intrigued to find out what kind of storm might be brewing in their conversation.
Mia, the office seems incredibly, almost unnervingly quiet this morning. Usually, especially on a Monday, it's so hectic with everyone catching up after the weekend, phones ringing off the hook, and a general buzz of activity. But today, it's almost completely silent. It's a bit strange, don't you think?
I know exactly what you mean, Mark. I was just thinking the very same thing. It's eerily peaceful, almost too peaceful. But then I remembered, don't you recall, this afternoon is precisely when the auditors are scheduled to arrive for that big, comprehensive, week-long company audit.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I completely forgot about the audit. That explains everything. They're going to be meticulously going through everyone's files, scrutinizing spreadsheets, and asking lots and lots of detailed questions. It's going to be an incredibly stressful and exceptionally busy week for all of us, especially for the poor souls in the finance department.
Exactly. So this unusual, almost deafening quietness we're experiencing this morning, I think this is definitely the calm before the storm. Everyone is probably trying to get as much of their regular work done as possible and mentally prepare themselves before the auditors descend upon us and the inevitable chaos and pressure begin.
You're probably spot on with that assessment. We should enjoy this peace and quiet while it lasts then, because from this afternoon onwards for the rest of the week, it's going to be anything but calm. The calm before the storm indeed.
That dialogue perfectly and vividly illustrates the idiom. Mia astutely described the unusual quiet in the office as the calm before the storm, knowing full well that a period of intense activity, scrutiny, and considerable stress was about to begin with the imminent arrival of the company auditors.
Exactly, Jack. The idiom in their exchange beautifully captured that distinct sense of a temporary, almost deceptive peace that was soon to be decisively broken by a challenging, demanding, and undoubtedly busy period for everyone involved. It effectively highlighted the keen anticipation of the impending storm of the audit.
It's a very common and remarkably vivid way to describe that specific feeling of an impending, challenging time, a feeling many of us can relate to.
It certainly is. So the next time you experience a noticeable period of quiet or tranquility just before a time of great activity, stress, or potential trouble, remember the evocative idiom, "It's the calm before the storm."
And we'd be fascinated to hear about a calm before the storm that you've personally experienced. What was the nature of the storm that followed that period of quiet? We invite you to share your stories and anecdotes in the comments section below this episode.
That's a wonderful idea, Jack. It's always great to hear from our listeners. Let's move on now to our third well-chosen idiom in this episode of Idiom Insights. This particular one is all about the process of gaining crucial early experience.
Our third idiom for today's discussion is cut your teeth on something.
Cut your teeth on something. This is a really interesting and rather quaint one. It immediately makes me think of babies going through the often uncomfortable process of getting their first teeth, sometimes chewing on things to relieve the discomfort. How does that particular image relate to gaining experience, Jack?
That's precisely where the vivid image originates from, Emma. Just as a baby cuts their teeth, meaning their first set of teeth emerge, often painfully, through their gums, frequently by chewing on various objects to help the process along, when you cut your teeth on something in an idiomatic sense, it means you gain your very first or early formative experience and foundational skills in a particular job, activity, field, or discipline. This often happens when you are young, just starting out in your career, or new to that specific area. It's the initial, crucial, character-building experience that helps you learn the absolute basics.
So it's specifically about that initial period of hands-on learning and gaining vital practical experience in a completely new area, often on a relatively simple, foundational, or less critical task or role. For instance, a now famous celebrity chef might reflect and say that they originally cut their teeth working as a humble kitchen assistant in a small local restaurant. This would mean that's precisely where they learned their most basic cooking skills, understood kitchen hierarchy, and got their very first real taste of the demanding culinary profession.
Precisely. That's a perfect example. Or similarly, a highly successful investigative journalist might recall that they cut their teeth writing for their university newspaper. That's where they would have learned the fundamental principles of reporting, interviewing, fact-checking, and writing compelling articles before eventually moving on to much bigger, national or even international publications. It strongly implies a starting point, a foundational ground where you develop your initial competence and understanding.
It often refers to an early job, a specific project, or a particular task that wasn't necessarily glamorous, high profile, or particularly well-paying, but it crucially provided invaluable foundational experience and learning opportunities. It's essentially where you sharpened your teeth, so to speak, on the fundamental basics of a skill, trade, or profession, building a platform for future growth.
Yes, it very often carries that distinct sense of a learning ground or a proving ground. It's the specific place, the role, or the activity where you first seriously started to develop your abilities and hone your talents in a particular domain. You are said to have cut your teeth on a specific type of work, project, or challenge.
So to offer another example, if an engineer later becomes a world-renowned leading expert in complex bridge design, they might look back and say they cut their teeth on designing small, relatively simple footbridges or culverts very early in their engineering career.
Exactly. Those smaller, less complex early projects were their essential training ground where mistakes could be made and learned from without catastrophic consequences.
So, to reiterate for our listeners, to cut your teeth on something means to gain your initial foundational experience and learn the basic essential skills in a particular job, activity, or field of endeavor. Are you ready to hear Mia and Mark use this insightful idiom?
Let's certainly listen in. I'm quite interested to hear what kind of early experiences or formative roles they might be discussing in their conversation.
Mark, I was so incredibly impressed with Sarah's presentation at the industry conference last week. She was so remarkably confident and exceptionally knowledgeable, and she handled all the challenging, tricky questions from the audience really well with such poise. She genuinely seems like a complete natural at public speaking.
She is very good, isn't she? She certainly commands attention, but I don't think she was always a natural, Mia, not by a long shot. I clearly remember when she first joined the company a few years ago, she was actually quite shy and visibly nervous about speaking in front of even small groups.
Really? That's quite hard to believe, seeing her perform so capably now. So how on earth did she become so skilled, articulate, and confident in her delivery?
Well, she confided in me once that she really cut her teeth on giving those small, informal, internal team updates that we used to have every single Monday morning. If you recall, nobody else particularly liked doing them, so she bravely volunteered to take them on regularly. They were generally low-pressure situations conducted in front of a familiar and supportive audience, but it crucially gave her regular, consistent practice at structuring her thoughts logically and speaking clearly and concisely. She explicitly said that's where she learned the absolute basics of presentation and effectively built her confidence, by systematically cutting her teeth on those small, regular internal presentations.
That makes so much sense now. So those early, less daunting and more frequent experiences were essentially her practical training ground. It just goes to show how critically important it is to get that initial practice and build a foundation, even if it's on smaller, seemingly less significant things.
That dialogue perfectly and clearly illustrates the idiom. Mark explained that Sarah had effectively cut her teeth on giving those small, routine, internal team presentations. This means she gained her vital initial experience and progressively developed her basic public speaking skills and confidence in those relatively early, less formal, and lower-stakes settings within the company.
Exactly, Jack. The idiom in their conversation effectively highlighted how those crucial foundational experiences helped her to build the impressive confidence and demonstrable abilities she now possesses and displays so well. It beautifully showed the immense importance of that early learning ground in professional development.
It's a very common and quite insightful idiom for describing precisely where, when, or how one gained their initial formative skills in a particular domain.
It certainly is. So the next time you are talking about where someone, perhaps even yourself, gained their crucial early experience in a particular field or developed a specific skill, remember the useful idiom, they cut their teeth on that early work or foundational task.
And we'd be genuinely interested to hear what you, our listeners, cut your teeth on. What was your very first significant experience in developing a particular skill or in your first job? We encourage you to share your personal stories and reflections in the comments section below this episode.
That's another wonderful idea, Jack. Now, we've arrived at our fourth and final idiom for this particular episode of Idiom Insights. This one, I must warn you, describes a rather dramatic and often unfortunate failure.
Our final idiom for today's deep dive is go down in flames.
Go down in flames. This sounds incredibly dramatic, highly visual, and utterly disastrous, almost like an airplane crashing and bursting into a fiery inferno upon impact. What exactly does it mean when something or someone goes down in flames, Jack?
Your vivid imagery is absolutely spot on, Emma. It is indeed a very dramatic phrase and unequivocally signifies a spectacular, undeniable failure. To go down in flames means to fail in a very sudden, extremely public, highly dramatic, and often disastrous, humiliating, or ruinous way. It strongly implies a complete and utter collapse or an irretrievable failure, frequently after a period of considerable hope, high expectation, or even apparent success, and usually in a manner that attracts a great deal of public attention and commentary.
So it's not just about simply failing, but failing spectacularly, catastrophically, and often very publicly for all to see. For instance, if a much-hyped new technology startup launched with a great deal of media attention and substantial venture capital investment collapses suddenly and loses all its money within just a few short months of operation, it has unequivocally gone down in flames. The failure is very visible, very sudden, and undeniably dramatic.
Precisely. That's a classic example. Or in a different sphere, if a prominent politician's promising career is abruptly and comprehensively ruined by a major, widely publicized scandal that becomes front-page news for days or weeks, their career can be accurately described as having gone down in flames. It's a very public, often ignominious, and usually terminal end to their ambitions. It often implies that there's little to no hope of recovery or redemption from such a catastrophic and widely witnessed failure.
It certainly sounds like it's most often used for things like projects, businesses, or even careers that initially had very high expectations, significant visibility, or a lot of public investment riding on them, so their subsequent failure is all the more dramatic and noteworthy. It's an incredibly vivid and powerful way to describe a total, unmitigated, and spectacular collapse.
Yes, the flames part of the idiom powerfully emphasizes the destructive, consuming, and often very public nature of the failure. It's definitely not a quiet, private, or dignified failure. It's typically a big, messy, noticeable disaster that everyone talks about. You might also hear it used for a highly favored sports team that was widely expected to win a major championship, but then loses very badly and unexpectedly in the final game. Or perhaps a lavish theatrical production that is forced to close after just one disastrous night due to overwhelmingly terrible reviews and poor ticket sales.
So essentially, it's about a complete, utter, and highly dramatic failure that frequently leads to total ruin, widespread disappointment, or the complete collapse of an enterprise or reputation.
Exactly. A very fiery, conclusive, and often memorable end.
So, to ensure everyone understands, to go down in flames means to fail in a very sudden, markedly public, intensely dramatic, and utterly disastrous fashion. Are you ready to hear Mia and Mark use this rather catastrophic, but certainly descriptive idiom?
Let's definitely listen in. I'm curious to discover what ambitious plan, promising project, or perhaps even a well-known entity might have failed so spectacularly in their particular story.
Mia, do you happen to remember that very ambitious, incredibly trendy new restaurant that opened downtown a few months ago? I think it was called The Gilded Spoon. It had so much media hype surrounding it. A renowned celebrity chef attached, incredibly fancy, opulent decor, and really, really high prices.
Oh yes, the Gilded Spoon. I remember reading all those glowing articles about its grand, star-studded opening. It was being touted as the most exclusive and luxurious dining experience in the entire city. I never actually got a chance to go, though. It was way, way out of my personal budget. How is it doing these days?
Well, that's precisely the thing. I happened to walk past its location yesterday afternoon, and there was a large, rather stark sign on the door unequivocally stating, "Permanently closed." Apparently, it shut down operations completely last week, after being open for only about 3 short months.
You're kidding me. Permanently closed already? After all that significant investment, all that publicity, and those sky-high expectations? What on earth happened to it?
Well, from what I've managed to hear through the grapevine, The food, while perhaps innovative, was considered incredibly overpriced by most patrons. The service was apparently quite snobby and aloof, and they just simply didn't get enough repeat customers or consistent bookings to sustain such a high-cost operation. So, despite all the considerable initial buzz, the celebrity chef's involvement, and the lavish setup, it seems the whole ambitious venture just completely went down in flames. It was a very public, very swift, and undoubtedly very expensive failure.
Wow, to go down in flames so quickly and so spectacularly after such a high-profile and heavily promoted launch. That's a truly dramatic and rather shocking collapse. It just goes to show that hype and a famous name aren't everything when it comes to long-term success.
That dialogue perfectly and vividly illustrates the idiom. Mark described how the much-hyped, incredibly expensive, and highly ambitious new restaurant failed spectacularly and was forced to close down very quickly, just months after its grand and widely publicized opening. It truly went down in flames.
Exactly, Emma. The idiom in that context perfectly captured the sudden, undeniably public, and utterly disastrous nature of the restaurant's unfortunate failure, especially given the extremely high expectations, significant financial investment, and extensive media coverage that had surrounded its launch. It was, by all accounts, a complete and dramatically visible collapse.
It's a very common and incredibly vivid idiom for describing such a catastrophic, often widely discussed failure.
It most certainly is. So the next time you hear about a significant project, promising business venture, or even someone's high-flying career failing in a very dramatic, public, and conclusive way, remember the potent idiom? It went down in flames.
And we'd be fascinated to hear if you've ever witnessed something, a project, a plan, an event, go down in flames. Hopefully not something you were personally involved in. What was the situation, and what were the circumstances? We invite you to share your examples and observations in the comments section below this episode.
We always appreciate reading your insightful comments and engaging stories. Well, Emma, we've thoroughly explored 4 more really insightful, highly descriptive, and extremely useful idioms in this packed episode of Idiom Insights.
We certainly have, Jack. It's been another great session. Just to quickly recap for everyone tuning into Idiom Insights today, the 4 key idioms we learned and discussed are:
Firstly, behind closed doors, meaning something happens in private or secretly, without any public knowledge, observation, or scrutiny.
calm before the storm, which vividly describes a period of unusual quiet, apparent peace, or inactivity that often precedes a time of significant trouble, chaos, or intense activity.
Thirdly, cut your teeth on something, meaning to gain your initial foundational experience or learn the basic, essential skills in a particular area, job, or discipline, often early in one's career.
And fourthly, go down in flames, which means to fail in a very sudden, strikingly public, intensely dramatic, and utterly disastrous or ruinous way.
4 more fantastic and practical additions to your ever-expanding English idiom collection. Remember, dear listeners, the absolute best way to truly master these expressive phrases is to actively listen for them in everyday conversations, in movies, in podcasts, and in written English. And then, crucially, to gain confidence by trying to use them yourself in appropriate conversational or written situations.
Absolutely, Jack. Consistent practice truly is key when it comes to mastering idiomatic language. Don't ever be afraid to try and incorporate them into your speaking and writing. The more frequently and naturally you use them, the more comfortable and instinctive they will become as part of your own linguistic repertoire.
And if you genuinely enjoyed learning with us today, and we sincerely hope that you did, please do consider giving this episode of Idiom Insights a like, a thumbs up, or leaving us a positive review on your preferred podcast platform. Your valuable support really does help other English learners discover our show and join our growing global community of idiom enthusiasts.
And please make absolutely sure you hit that subscribe or follow button for Idiom Insights so you don't miss any of our upcoming future episodes, where we'll continue our mission to demystify and illuminate the wonderful, witty, and sometimes quite perplexing world of English idioms. We have many more exciting phrases to explore together.
Thank you all so very much for joining us today on Idiom Insights. It's truly been a pleasure exploring these fascinating English phrases with you all.
Keep learning, keep listening, keep practicing, and we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Idiom Insights.
Goodbye for now, everyone. Take care.
See you later. Bye-bye.